Now, let's pick up with Rule 3, which I think is the easiest rule. If you list anything in a series, which is 3 or more, then you have to have a comma after each of the individual items or ideas. That's because people need to pause so it doesn't all get crammed together and sound like gobbledygook. Now, the mistake people commonly make is if you just have 2 ideas together, then you do not need a comma. Example, I like peanut butter and jelly. I play basketball and football. My brother and sister went to the park. None of those need commas because you don't pause, you don't need to slow down. But if you have 3 or more, like on any of these examples, cheeseburger, a large fries, and a vanilla milkshake, you're pausing after each one of those, so you have to have a comma before you go on. And it starts at 3, but you could have 10 things in a series, and you have to have commas after the first 9. Comma rule number 4 to set off a phrase or a description is what I call the leapfrog. Because whatever you're describing, you're going to be able to pause to tell that phrase and then leapfrog and go right on to the rest of your sentence without missing a beat. Bill, who is my neighbor, works along the Ohio River. The painting, which just sold for $3 million, was from the year 1600. Our printer that we just bought continues to jam papers. Notice how to describe that phrase or idea, I paused, and then I paused again and continued for the rest of the idea. This is the exact same use as parentheses if you want to think about it that way. You could put, who is my new neighbor in parentheses, which just sold for $3 million in my parentheses, that we just bought in parentheses. When you use commas, you're going to slow down, just describe that first noun, and then continue on. I call it the leapfrog because, again, you're going to jump right over it, and the rest of the sentence should still make sense. Even if you eliminated that entire section, the entire sentence would still be fine. And the last comma rule is probably the most sophisticated and least used. If you have 2 or more adjectives directly in front of a noun, then you have to have a comma to slow them down, again, so people don't get log jammed while they're reading it. Saxon is a detailed, challenging math book. They both describe the math book. The train edged up the steep, rocky hillside. They both describe the hillside. If you have adjectives earlier in the sentence, you don't have to put commas by them. The rule is the adjectives have to be directly before the word that you are describing. Now, if you have 2 adjectives that kind of go together, like violent video game or brand new album, then something like those, you don't really have to slow down when you say them. Like cold February day would be another example. So you don't need a comma. It's almost as if you have to slow down only if the adjectives are bigger or you really want to emphasize them. For example, it was a dark, scary night near Halloween time. That would be where you need a comma between dark and scary.